Thank you. Directly from Transylvania. So I'm here to talk to you about pixel promises and panic, because normally we have production issues, outages, downtime, service failures, system breakdowns, and all these serious problems are affecting developers and engineers worldwide. And what is the root of all of this? What causes developers to not sleep well at night? Well, it's actually bugs. So these ferocious little rascals bypass all our automated tests, QA checks. They go to production and they wreak havoc on our users, causing churn, causing loss of revenue, and frustrating users every day. And bugs can mess with our application in all sorts of ways, either security, functionality, safety, and that's why debugging is such a huge thing as part of our jobs. But who here knows why they're even called bugs? Oh, a couple, that's cool. So I always thought they're called bugs because they're gross and scary. But then why wouldn't they call them something more scary, like snakes? Imagine a colleague comes to you and say, hey, you have a snake on line 24. Whoa, you'll be like, what happened? Or something really scary, like clowns. But in reality, is in 1947 at Harvard University, a team of computer scientists saw that their computer, a big-ass computer, was giving constantly some errors. And after tinkering with the software, they decided to open up the computer, and they found there a bug stuck on the electric circuit. And of course, the name also became popular. It got popular by Dr. Grace Hopper, who, among other things, invented one of the oldest and still used programming languages, which is COBOL. Now, personally, I don't find bugs that scary. That's why I like to call them Bugs Bunny. Because think about it, Bugs Bunny never gave up. He always outwitted Elmer Fudd and Daffy Duck and found a way to get what he wanted. He repeatedly changed like duck season to rabbit season to duck season, and tricked Elmer Fudd to shoot himself in the face. So it's the same thing with bugs. No matter how much you try, how many QA people you throw at it, how many automated tests with 100% test coverages, Bugs Bunny will find a way to make you, the developer, shoot yourself in the face. Bugs Bunny is inevitable. That's why it's our job as engineers to be prepared. We need to always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We should also learn as much as possible from bugs, from his earlier attempts, so we block some tunnels that he dug through our carrot tree. So we mustn't let bugs get fat, because it will reach the point where he's going to eat all your carrots. So this is what I'm going to talk about today, how to fuck up and get away with it. So personally, Bugs Bunny has outwitted me a couple of times and wreaked havoc in my life, my friends, my colleagues. Now, most of these stories that I'm about to tell were super frustrating at the time, super sad, but now I can look back with happiness, with fondness, and laugh about them. And of course, each of them had a solution in hindsight, and that's why I'm talking about them, so you can learn from my mistakes. So a little bit about myself. I'm a staff engineer at CareerOS. We're an HR and educational software that helps MBA students navigate the job market. And of course, being MBA students, they're very, very picky and attentive to detail, so we must build a really, really clean software. Before that, I worked in advertising for companies like McDonald's or KFC, Coca-Cola, and we had to build campaigns that reached millions of users, but we also had to do it very fast because we had to take advantage of the viral nature of the campaign. So for example, Brexit, or if something happened with some celebrities, gossip, I don't know. After that, before that, actually, I worked in an e-commerce company in New York, startup, having millions of users every day. And even before that, I was actually a QA engineer at EA Games, and I used to work on Need for Speed Underground. Woo! So I worked on different types of products, from e-commerce to food delivery. Actually, I also worked at Glovo for 3 years. I forgot to mention that, which is a food delivery company. It's actually here in Croatia as well. So I know how picky users are and I remember how awful it was to be in the middle of a game and have it crash and then having to start all over from scratch again. So I joined my first company. I was a junior developer. I knew a little thing here and there from college, like how to reverse a list or different dynamic programming, data structure, stuff like that, that became absolutely useless as soon as I entered my job. As a web developer, I only knew how to position divs with absolute when I joined, and I watched a tutorial, and that's how I got my first job. But then I joined a small company that had a lot of projects and really few developers, so I had to learn and adapt from the first day. And in this company, we were used to making a lot of browser games, again, for advertising companies and big brand names. So here we are building these amazing gaming experience, usually point-and-click games in the browser, and this one was, we were helping children learn from the benefits of milk. So in Romania, in school, we usually give children from grade 1 to 4, we used to give them free milk every day. So this campaign was going to explain to them the benefits of milk and how the milk gets from the farm, from the cows, to their desks. Obviously, it was sponsored by a super big corporation that was doing the packaging for the milk. Now, the game itself was very straightforward, even for elementary school children, like 7 or 8-year-olds. All they had to do, they had 3 mini games like this, and they had to click when they saw the milk bottle and not the other things. Hay, the hay. So they're not supposed to click on the hay, they were supposed to click on the milk bottle. And of course, if they clicked in succession multiple times, they get a streak, and they will get some points. Now, they had multiple games, so they could pause. They had a little pause there, and they can pause and can move to the other game. Now, one tricky mechanic of this game was while you're navigating through these mini games, you have just one general score. Now, what we did also to keep the children entertained, we had a leaderboard at the start of the game. Now, one thing I didn't count was how effective and how driven 7-year-olds can be to be at the top of the leaderboard. Especially, this competition didn't have any prizes, and it was before we knew about gamification and habits and stuff like that. We just put it there for fun. And the kids went crazy. So we tested the game for months. Our company tested it, the client tested it. We did some user testing as well. We were super confident. And when we came back a week after launching, after a weekend, surprise, surprise, the top 20 were in the matter of billions. And of course, we built a similar game before for adults. It was a game for like oil changes, sponsored by an oil company. And people actually cheated because there we gave them free oil change or something like that. And we assumed, okay, someone cheated here, right? They did something, it's one user, he logged in multiple times, and he just wanted to be in the top 20. And it took us by surprise, and our first instinct was, okay, let's ban these people, right? So immediately we assumed the worst, we banned the 20 accounts, and we were very happy about it. Then everything went back to normal. It took us, I think, a week before the shit hit the fan, because what happened was we got it bombarded by calls from our clients, from the media, because they told us we made 20 children cry. So apparently all those 20 children we banned were from the same class. When we banned them and they got removed from the top 10, everyone in their school started calling them cheaters. And they started crying and feeling bad. And the first thing they did, they went to their parents. And the only thing scarier than a pissed off mother with the children is 20 pissed off mother with their children. So of course they banded together, called the company, called some local news, they started Facebook threads, and it took us like a week before it reached us, the outsourced company that actually built the game. So when it did, we found out what actually happened. So we thought it was a hacker, that they hacked us, something like that. No. What they found is they found a small trick inside the game. They found that if you had a streak going and you paused and then you resumed and then you paused and then you resumed and then you paused, and it will double the score. So one child found this out, and what he did is he told his friends. And his friends started doing it the same. And of course, it became a competition who could be at the top, at the top, at the top. And then we banned them, and of course, we found out what actually caused this was one line of code, was an if statement that didn't check the general score for what we had in the database. So one line of code made 20 children cry. And that line of code, written in PHP. So we can say that PHP makes even young children cry, not just us adults. Of course, in the end, we apologized, we fixed the issue, we restored their accounts, and in the top 20, we put their scores closely to number 21, and everyone was very happy. We let the friendly competition continue. Now, what did I learn from this? So obviously, every game needs to be super tested, stress tested, and again tested. Throw a hammer at it, make sure you don't have such vulnerabilities in your code. And it would be really cool to have an alert system. If a score goes way above the medium, you should be alerted so you can see what's happening. But most importantly, don't make rash decisions with your user accounts. Explain and educate. And of course, be nicer in general, especially to children. Now, the next part, it still gives me nightmares to this day. Now, it's a story that's pretty popular, and it can happen to many developers. And I usually pride myself on not having push notifications enabled on my phone. So one morning, I keep my push notifications for like PagerDuty, Slack alerts, or stuff like that, just for work. So one morning, I was woken up at 7 in the morning by a push notification from my bank telling me that someone just tried to take $50,000 from my account. I got super scared, but thankfully the bank said, okay, this is clearly fraudulent, I'm gonna block your card. I was super happy. Then I went back to sleep, but while I was sleeping in my half-sleep days like that, I was thinking, who is stupid enough to try to take $50,000 from my bank account? Like, why not try $200, see if it works, then try a little bit more, you know? Who tries $50,000 from the get-go? And then I immediately jumped from my bed, grabbed my phone, and checked the vendor that tried to take the money, and of course, it was Google. I hoped it was some Nigerian prince or, you know, one of my childhood friends from Romania. So I was horrified. I went white, put down my phone, and started thinking about solutions. And of course, this is super popular nowadays, right? You have Netlify just send me a $105K bill for static sites, or even the very popular George Lee wrote about Kava, which is a portfolio site for designers that got super, super popular, and in 3 days, they created a bill of $96K. And of course, Firebase, this was what I was afraid of because I had multiple projects in Firebase. Even at that time, there was a famous story of a company who Firebase changed their billing method and they got billed for like $200K and made their company go bankrupt. So I was contemplating solutions in my head. So first I need to see what resources Google I had in my infrastructure because I needed to move those from Google infrastructure to something else, like other projects that were not spending money. Find out what was the issue and shut it down because I was literally bleeding money. And finally, step 3, and the most important, find somewhere in the woods and live there because I was never gonna pay $50,000 to Google. So I was looking through all my projects and hitting myself in the head, like how could I forget something like as important as Firebase or billing? And I was sad because I knew I had to move some super legacy apps from Laravel, from Google to AWS to get away and keep my clients happy. But I searched and couldn't find the bill anywhere. Another of my projects were overbuilt. So I searched the emails again, and I finally noticed where the bill came for. So my current company, where I worked at, someone there mistakenly put my billing account at a BigQuery account instead of the company's. So I got a 50K bill that was a legit bill, but it was not for me, it was for my company. So of course, while I heard this and when I saw this and I called my company and explained the situation, they said, don't worry, we're gonna fix it, you don't have to pay a thing. I was like, whew, the biggest relief of my lifetime. Like I swear, I never felt a heaviness lift from my shoulders like in that moment. So I went from being 50K in debt to Google to a free man ready to use the 300 credits again that they give me every time I make a new account. So with the problem solved, I actually had to do something about it. So I researched and I added to all my accounts an alert system. So every time I went over $100, I get pinged. Of course, this is easy with Google Cloud, but it's not so easy with Netlify or Strapi or any headless CMS that you might pay software as a service. So you have to set up a third party or something to actually monitor your traffic. So every time you have spikes in traffic, you get alerted or it shuts down the website automatically. So the most important part from this is to always monitor traffic because traffic spikes can cause surge in costs. Now, another example of this sort of thing happening was at my current work, where we actually tinkered with the authentication system and we changed the redirect loop. What we didn't count when we did this, we tested it, of course, we made sure everything was fine, and then we released it to production. But one user had the tab open for a long time, and when he came to that tab, his session expired, and of course, it went to the old route for the authentication system, which returned him because it was not valid. And this, okay, he didn't have a valid session, so he went again, and then again. And he got caught up in this infinite loop. And he actually, in that page, we had this, which was every time you visit the page, just track the page that it was visited. And because of the user was stuck in a loop, in 1 second, he created 3 million events for our analytics software. And of course, this surged our bill, so we had like 25K worth of bill. But thankfully nowadays, we explained, obviously all the events were done in 1 second, we fixed the bug, and the analytics software were kind enough to forgo the bill and say, okay, let it never happen again. So what I learned, have limits, monitor traffic, never have events or calls that trigger on page load. Always use events when users actually click something. And limit analytics to 1 event per second. This is another thing I did, was create a proxy of the analytics library and only send from 1 user 1 event, or at least 10 per second max. Don't let them create a million of events. So now that we got the really scary stuff out of the way, let's talk something more fluffy, CSS. I like to talk about CSS. So every framework now uses CSS or a superset of CSS, and it's technically not a programming language, but it has variables, loops. We saw how complicated CSS can get and how wonderful we can build things with it. But for us, we had this button. So we had a button, it was a pretty normal button, it did what it was supposed to do, but the designers wanted and the product wanted something more. You know, it has to pop, actually. The users need to know that the page is alive, it's interactive. So they thought, okay, when we're doing something, let's add a small loader instead of that icon there. So the user is aware, okay, relax, we're up to something here. And of course, we didn't consider it, but one of the most important forms in any page where you have buttons is the checkout form. So we implemented this new button everywhere, including in the checkout form. Unfortunately, the checkout form at our company was built using a different framework. So it was built using Angular 1, while our website was in something else. And the reactivity of the button, when we changed the payment method, it would apply this loading because we would fetch in the API to see if the card was valid. So it will apply this loading to the button at the bottom. And because the checkout form was written in an old framework, it didn't remove the loading. So the user kept seeing the loading there. And of course, the button was still active, so the user could click on it. We didn't add a disabled field. But still, seeing that loading there made users not click it. Makes sense. But not all users, just a couple. And all our end-to-end tests passed because the button was clickable, and a couple did click it. So our revenue didn't go down immediately. It just went down little by little by little by little. And it took us quite a month to figure out that this happened. Because after a month, we saw, okay, this is not the normal revenue from last year. What happened? Then we checked checkout events. Okay, this went down. Why? And then we went through this rabbit hole until we found out, okay, this loading button is not working. So in the end, after we found it, we realized simple is always better, especially for critical parts of the application. There's a new thing, new-ish, visual tests that will check if something in your CSS is broken. And of course, monitor checkout completed events. If you have alerts set in place for checkout, so when your checkout dips, you know something is wrong, you get alerted, and you can figure it out immediately. So now you know that saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So this entire situation with the checkout form actually happened again. This time at Glovo, 4 years later, I was working at Glovo. Me and my team were responsible for web performance, core web vitals, stuff like that. And we found out that we had a third-party CSS, a third-party library that was using CSS, and it was imported in every page. And we decided, okay, this is used only in specific pages. Let's just remove it and add it to that page. And of course, we were using it in the checkout, and we didn't realize it. And at the moment we removed that, the select payment stopped working. So people could not choose their card. So they were stuck in the checkout form, and they couldn't complete their order. Now, of course, we broke the exact select payment method, but this time it wasn't actually me who did it. So I was in the team responsible, but this was COVID, we were remote, we had dailies remote, and everyone was talking. And of course I wasn't listening during daily when they said, oh, I'm just gonna remove some select CSS from the checkout page. I was like, what can go wrong? I wasn't listening. And the funny thing is, at the time at Glovo, we had a deployment system that was, we first deployed to beta, which was another website, and it stayed there for 2 weeks before we deployed to production. And in beta, all our Glovo employees would use it to order food. So we had 5,000 people stress tested before we released to production. And we did notice, people complained that, hey, in the footer, the select is not working. And we said, what can go wrong? Leave it like that. We'll fix it after we launch. Who changes something in the footer? It was the language change. Who changes languages anyway? So we decided it's fine. I wasn't listening in the daily. We wasn't listening to our users. We said, okay, let's just release it. Our end-to-end tests were going correctly because we had end-to-end tests written until you reach the checkout. So we were like, okay, everything is working until you reach the checkout. Then for sure it's working everywhere. So we had ordered alerts in place. So as soon as we released it on Monday morning, it was fine for 20 minutes, and then all our alert system went down because people couldn't order. So thankfully now we did have alerts in place, but it took us an hour to revert, and then our team had to write a post-mortem about it. And while I was personally not involved in this particular blunder, I was actually working on something else. So what did I learn? Pay attention in daily. Please do that. Alerts on checkout events are a lifesaver, like I said, and then write proper postmortems after something happens. This way, a postmortem is like a document your team writes, and then in it you understand what's the cause of the issue, what made it happen, and what can we do to prevent it to make sure this does not happen again. So we reach one section that I know all the developers really love, which is refactoring. So every time we have to do something, some refactoring, almost certainly it goes wrong. We work for months to make something better, and of course, it gets worse than we started. I really like this quote where 60% of the time, it works every time. This should be the general motto of software engineers everywhere. So joking aside, there are a couple of places I really don't like tinkering with, like checkout, like I said. There's a reason the checkout was in Angular 1. It still works now. So it's been, I think, 12 years. It's still written. Nobody touches it. Nobody changes anything in the checkout. And of course, the other thing is signups and authentication. You know the saying, why fix it if it ain't broke? And I've been part of companies that tried to fix authentication or improve it, and every time it got worse. But those are stories for another time. Let me share you my last story. So this is by far, I think, the greatest, and I saved the best for last. So in my last company, 3 years ago, Glovo, we had an on-call staff, so if something went wrong, you had a pager duty on your phone, and it started ringing if an alert gets triggered. So we were in the kitchen. We had a big office, big kitchen, and all of a sudden, phones started buzzing. Beep, 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 everywhere around the office. And we looked at it, and we saw that we were being under attack. And this was very common at the time. Glovo was very popular, 26 countries. A lot of hackers were trying to DDoS the website, and just for fun, I think. So it was a common occurrence. We had Amazon firewall in place. It just triggered automatically, and it will block the IPs of the attacker. And we saw that this happened. We muted the alarm, went back to our food. And then we hoped the alarms would stop, but then they got louder and louder and louder. And we actually had to run to our laptops, jump in a meeting with 60 other people, with infrastructure engineers, security engineers, and even principal engineers, because what happened was our app was actually down. So we started thinking, all of us in this Slack huddle, what can actually bring down our app and bypass Amazon firewall? How can they do that? And then we spent like 30 minutes analyzing traffic, seeing the reports, and we finally found the person responsible, and that was us. So what happened was, one engineer released something that created a redirect. So when someone went to a page, if he wanted to go from the restaurant page to a specific restaurant, because he clicks somewhere, it will actually loop him through like 5 or 6 other pages. And because of this, all the traffic instantly went 10 times as big. And because in each page we made 10 or 20 requests to the backend, all the backend responses went up 100 times. And of course, Amazon Firewall saw this and said, something is making 100 more calls to this API call, let's kill it. And that was our app. Now, of course, this also passed the end-to-end test, because the end-to-end test didn't verify that you go from page A to page B directly. They just checked, have you reached page B? Oh, then that's fine. That's what we aimed for. But what happened was you went from A to C to D to A to F, and then finally to C, and the end-to-end test took like 3 times that long, but we didn't have timeouts, and of course, it reached production. So how did this error get to production? It passed the end-to-end test. It passed actually even the 2 weeks it spent in beta, because people didn't notice it. It was very fast, so you clicked a page, it went bam, 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 like 2-3 seconds, and they said, it's just JavaScript. So what did I learn from this? Well, don't attack your own app. That's not good practice. We were using the page object model pattern to run our end-to-end test, which is not a really strong enough pattern when you're shipping to millions of users. And of course, this redirection logic was handled in middlewares, which were not being tested inside of the app. So please keep complex logic out of middlewares. So let's sum up. We found out how to make children cry and get away with it, how to get away with a 50K bill from Google, how to style your CSS buttons so users don't click on them, how to correctly remove CSS from your payment forms, and how to bring down your app with extra requests. But in all seriousness, I did learn a lot of things and made me a better developer, like how to empathize with your users, have alerts in place with everything out of the ordinary. So for example, if you are building a game, if a score gets too high, have alerts in place. This will also help you see if someone is cheating. And of course, have orders, events orders for checkout events or when your app is down. Write postmortems. So if something goes wrong, write a document, share it with your organization. This will increase transparency and make sure it's not a blame game, so we don't do the Spider-Man meme every day at work. And finally, it will pass. If this happens to you, it's not the end of the world. You will look at it after 1 year or 2 years and laugh. I'm sure all of us at one point dropped the production table by mistake. So thank you.